Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmageti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the divine consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. All right. Yes, are we ready for the song?
Yes,
Come on,
Maharaj.
Gautam, come on, let's start. Let's start.
This is an Abhang Maharaj by Namdev.
Oh, very good. Very good.
माझा तुझे चरणी माझा तुझे चरणी तुझे माझे माझा तुझे चरणी माझा तुझे चरणी माझे माझा सापडलो सापडलो जन्मो जन्मी नो है सुखा नो है सुखा माझा तुझे चरणी माझा तुझे चरणी माझा पामोडीने माझी माया पामोडीने माझी माया मी तो जळलो तुझ्या पायात मी तो जळलो तुझ्या पायात माझा माझा Twamaj mokali Twamaj mokali तुझे घात ले हृदय घात ले हृदय माझा भाग तुझे चरणी माझा भाग तुझे चरणी माझे माझा नामाने गासुजाना नामाने गासुजाना संग कोणे थकविले कोणा संग कोणे
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful song. So we shall take a look at chapter 4 of the Gita. One advantage of studying the Gita is that it's not, I mean, there is a narrative behind it. We know the background about how in what circumstances this teaching was given. But it's not necessary that if you're studying the chapter 4, that, oh, I haven't studied chapter 3 well yet, so will I understand what the chapter 4 is saying? That kind of a problem doesn't occur so much. Partly because the Gita is like the Ganges River, for instance, like the Ganga. Whether you take a dip in the Ganga in Gangotri near the source, or near Haridwar or Kashi, or just before before it meets the ocean, no matter where you take a dip in the Ganga, the river is the same. So similarly, it is possible to dip anywhere in the Gita and find inspiration and teachings that can help us in our life. In North India, for instance, sometimes they'll have someone come and explain the Ramayana. And sometimes it's just one talk, and Ramayana is such a big story. And so essentially, no one really knows which incident or which part of Ramayana the speaker is going to speak about. They'll simply begin with generally, Prasang chal raha hai, Ram darbar mein aa gaye hain. They'll just kind of dip into this whole ocean of the Ramayana and pick up some incident or a group of incidents, and then we get to learn. So Gita is a little bit like that. So don't be worried that you are as if you are starting somewhere in the middle now, and whether we should have studied the earlier part better in order to understand this. So that problem will not come. There are certain basic concepts in the Gita which most of you are familiar with. Many of you have been attending these talks and lectures and retreats by many visiting monks and nuns. So you're familiar with many of these ideas. So what we will do, we'll kind of go through the entire chapter. Days, it has about around 40 verses. So every day, say 10, 12, or 13 verses if we do, within 3 days, we will be able to cover this chapter well. At least have a kind of a quick revision of what ideas, what teachings are present in this. And then later on, during our personal study, we can then take our own sweet time with each verse, reflect on it, and so on. So it's not that we can finish, nobody can ever say about these scriptures, I have finished chapter 3. I've finished chapter 4. We can never finish it. Even people who recite the Gita regularly, they sometimes will do, say, a chapter every day or a few verses every day. So they start from the first chapter, and when they reach the 18th chapter and finish the last verse of the last chapter, they don't stop chanting there. The tradition is, if you are reciting the Gita, when you reach the last verse of the last chapter, then you do the first verse of the first chapter, and then you stop for the day. The idea is we should not ever feel that I've finished the Gita, that I still need to study. And that should be our approach towards all these books. We can never finish them. We will finish them only when we become spiritually enlightened. In the, I think in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is said, Tatra Vedaha Aveda Bhavanti. Even the Vedas, which are considered the revealed text, even the Vedas become non-Vedas, in the sense that once we have become enlightened, once we have had God realization, once we have become Jivan Muktas, we don't need any books. We don't even need the Vedas. And that's the idea. So we should derive all the wisdom from books and never imagine that our study is finished unless and until we have become enlightened. So let's look at the chapter. I'll read the Sanskrit first, then the translation, and then if I have any comments on them. So the chapter begins with Sri Krishna's words. If you have copies of the Gita with you, please open them at chapter 4, and I will recite it. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivaspate Yogam Proktavan Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manurikshva Kave Bravit. So Sri Krishna says, I told this imperishable yoga to Vivasvat. Vivasvat told it to Manu, and Manu told it to Ikshvaku. So the teaching that Krishna is about to give, he has already started giving that teaching. Most of the teaching were already given in chapter 2 and 3. So he is reminding Arjuna that the teaching that is being given to you, it's not anything that originated from me. It's not like something that I have pulled out of the thin air. That first of all, this teaching has a long tradition behind it. It's a long lineage behind it. That long ago, I had taught this to Vivasvat, and Vivasvat had taught it to Manu. Manu told it to Ikshvaku. So it has come from a series of teachers who lived long, long, long ago. So that is one thing which we should all remember. That when we study the Gita, we study these texts, that before us, generations of earnest spiritual seekers have studied this book, have practiced it, have become enlightened. So if the Gita were written yesterday, and this is like the first edition that we are studying, then there is a reason to be a little bit skeptical. Who knows whether it works or not? But luckily for us, the Gita has been around for centuries. Generations of people have practiced it. It has worked. So we know it works. So if it doesn't work in our own case, hasn't worked in our own case yet, we can't blame the book for it. Like, I need to then do something better to then make these teachings practical in my own life. So this is the first verse. Krishna is reminding Arjuna that this teaching, this wisdom has come down through centuries, and he was the one who first taught it to Vivasvat. So verse 2, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakalene hamahata yogo nashta parantapa. Thus handed down in regular succession, the royal sages knew it. This yoga, by long lapse of time, declined in this world, a scorcher of foes. So, as with every sphere of knowledge, this knowledge has been passed from one generation to the next. But over time, things get diluted. We know that, and sometimes we might have heard our own parents and grandparents saying, oh, how things were such wonderful in good old days and how terrible the things are now. And in every generation, we keep on hearing it. And maybe you will tell that to even your own grandchildren, saying, oh, our time things were so good. And now it's so terrible. And so this is the story. But over time, this does happen, that something wonderful. It's like a big wave that comes. A wave doesn't remain at that same height, the same level all the time. The wave also then subsides. And of course, once it subsides, we know that's not the end. Another wave will come. So essentially, just very soon, in the next few verses, Krishna is going to explain the advent of the avatar. And so this is a kind of a preparation to show, why does an avatar come? When God created the world, well, God is perfect. God should have created a perfect world. There was no need for God to come again and again. We created the world and everything is fine. Everyone lives happily ever after. But that's not what happens. Even though we attribute creation to a divine source, over time, and there are any number of ways one can explain it. Sometimes people say the power of Maya, sometimes it says the selfishness in the human heart. In one way or the other, over time, these teachings become kind of diluted more and more, and they get lost. Which is why then we need great teachers to come in once every few generations to try to then revive these teachings. And so this is a preparation for introducing the idea of why a divine incarnation comes. So he says, this was handed out in regular succession, and the royal sages, Deva Rishis, Rajarshis, they knew it. But a long lapse of time, this yoga declined in this world. And essentially, Krishna now is born to revive this declined yoga and to kind of rejuvenate it again, fill it with power again. So verse 3, Sa evayam maya tedya yoga proktav puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam yetaduttamam. I have this day told thee that same ancient yoga, for thou art my devotee and my friend, and this secret is profound indeed. So Krishna is saying, the same teaching that I gave generations ago, that teaching I'm giving to you today, because you are my devotee and my friend. Now, one of the things that is helpful to keep in mind, when Krishna says you are my devotee, you are my friend, what does Krishna mean? When Krishna uses the pronoun I, or me, or mine, who is he referring to? Because we apply that same pronoun to ourselves several times in the course of a day. I did this, this is mine, or I did. So when we say I, who are we referring to? And generally, we're referring to this whole package, the body, the mind, and if there's anything more besides that as well. Now, when Krishna says, you are my devotee, my friend, is he referring to the same Krishna's body, mind, and everything? The same Krishna who was born in Nandagram and is in Vrindavan and Mathura. Is that Krishna being referred to, or something more? And the idea is, why is Krishna special? Why are these great ones special? Why is Buddha special? Why is Jesus special? Because when they use the pronoun I, they meant something different than when you and I use the term I. When they meant the real I, the divine dwelling in their heart. So when Krishna says, you are my devotee, you are my friend, what it means is that Arjuna's heart was pure enough to receive this teaching from Krishna. He he's developed that close relationship with the divine, so close, then he can look at the divine as a friend, that he is a devotee. And he said, this secret is profound indeed. So oftentimes, and in several places in the Gita, the teaching is referred to as rahasyam. Rahasyam, it's a secret. Guhyam, it's a profound secret. Now, we might say, why is the teaching secret? It's secret not because it is something, sometimes people keep secrets because it's something they want to hide from other people. It's because of maybe something illegal, immoral, and people want to keep such things secret. Now, this teaching is secret, not for any of those reasons. It is because it is sacred. It's the sanctity of the teaching. Oftentimes, our teachers say that the mantra you have received from the Guru should not be told to anyone. Again, why is the mantra a secret? Because of its sanctity. That the more it gets indiscriminately shared with others, it loses its power. And that's why Krishna is saying that this teaching is very sacred, that I'm giving it to you because you're a good person. You are my devotee. I see you as my close friend. And we know historically, Krishna and our cousins, they were related. They're more or less, I believe, of the same age. So there was that relationship of being a friend. Now, those of you who have studied the Gita know that by the time you come to the 11th chapter of the Gita, when Krishna shows his Vishwarupa, the cosmic form, and then that's a big kind of a shock to Arjuna in some way. Until that time, he knew Krishna was special, but still, he's my cousin, he's my friend, he's my dear friend. But when he sees this cosmic form, and then he seeks forgiveness and says, oh, all along, I thought of you as my friend. Now I realize you are someone very big, very special. That will take time. That will come in the 11th chapter. But right now, Krishna says, you are my friend, you are my devotee. I'm going to share this secret with you. Now, Arjuna, of course, thanks to Arjuna, that he always has these doubts and questions. And that helps clarify some of the things that Krishna said. Because if Arjuna had not asked this question, we wouldn't even have known the reasons why Krishna says certain things. So you look at verse 4. Arjuna says, Aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvataha kathametat vichaniyam tvamadau proktavaniti. Arjuna said, later was thy birth, and that of Vivasvat prior. That is, Vivasvat was way before you were born. How should I understand that you told this to him in the beginning? And that's just a very simple question of logic. You are my cousin. We both are same age. This Vivat was like centuries ago. How could you have given that teaching to someone who lived several centuries ago? And that's Arjuna's question. And then Krishna replies, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam vetha parantapa. The Blessed Lord said, many are the births that have been passed by me and thee, O Arjuna. I know them all, while thou knowest not, O scorcher of foes. So Krishna, here is the genesis of the idea of rebirth that we find that occurs often in the Gita. So Krishna is saying, don't think that neither you nor I, this is our first birth. We both have been born many, many times before. And that's true of all of us. That this is not our first birth. That we have had many, many incarnations in the past. But there's one difference. Krishna says, I remember all of my past births. And you don't. So it's possible for me to have given this teaching to Vivasvat centuries ago, because I was there in a different form, in a different birth. I remember it, but you don't remember it. Now we can ask here that we don't remember our past births. Is it something we should strive to find out? And there are, of course, if you are curious what your past birth was or what your future birth will be, there'll be a lot of people who will be willing to tell you that if you're willing to pay them something. And so, yes, sometimes it's kind of a industry in itself. Some people, I think they call it like past life regression or something like that. And think some people want to go back into that past life to find out what they were. The trick to that is there is no way to verify. Anyone can come and cook up stories and say, this is what you were in the last birth. You either believe it or you don't believe it. And so there is no verification involved. But even more importantly, what's the point? How will it help me to know all the details of my past birth? Because, I think our life is complicated as it is without remembering any of the past birth, even without remembering things in this birth itself. In spite of not remembering everything, even in this birth, our life is quite complicated already. If we remembered every little detail of this life itself, we would go insane. And just imagine if you remember what happened in the last birth and 2 births before, there's no way we can keep our sanity. Just think about it. You're walking on the road and there's some person, total stranger coming from in front of you. And you don't even know that person in this birth, but you remember your past birth. Or last birth, we had a big fight and he did this injustice to me. Then you want to go and beat him for nothing. And again, maybe your closest friend may have been your worst enemy in the last birth. All relationships, relationships also are quite complicated. They will get even more complicated if we remember these things. So I think in a way that we forget a lot of things in this life itself is a great blessing. I believe there is some medical name for it, that people who are not able to forget, it's a pretty debilitating illness. In fact, years ago, I had read about one young woman, and years ago, so if she's still living, she may not be young anymore. And she lived somewhere if I remember correctly, somewhere in Maryland or maybe in Pennsylvania, I don't know, somewhere in that area. And she was suffering from this illness. And as I said, I don't remember the medical name of it, that she is not able to forget anything. And she was under medication for that. You could ask her, like, 23 years ago on 23rd March, what did you have for breakfast? And she can tell you exactly what she had for breakfast. It's totally useless knowledge. What am I going to do with all that information? But it made it so difficult. She could not sleep. She could not lead a normal life. So in a way that we forget many things in life, we should say is a God's grace to us. Of course, if we forget even what we need to remember, then there is a problem. But some of these totally useless things, it's a little bit like, if you use a computer and if you keep a lot of useless files in it, which you don't need, you're just going to fill your hard drive. And then your computer is going to get sluggish and to give trouble. So occasionally it needs cleaning. The things that you don't need should be removed. Unfortunately, it's not easy to forget things consciously. And so nature does it for us by making us forget many of the things. And it's a whole different subject. There are some things from our past we are not able to forget, and what we should do about it if they continue to bother us or trouble us. But that's a different subject. So what Krishna is saying here is that you and I, Arjuna, we have had many, many past births. I remember them all, but you don't remember them. Verse 6. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim swam adhishthaya sambhavyami atma mayaya. Though I'm unborn, of changeless nature and Lord of beings, yet subjugating my Prakriti, I come into being by my own Maya. Now, in many translations, if you are having a translation in front of you, whenever Krishna uses this first person pronoun, they generally tend to capitalize it. Said my with a capital M. And that's sometimes helpful to recognize that Krishna is not speaking about the historical Krishna. He means that the divine spirit is referring to that. So he says, though I am unborn. So every time there is an I, you can safely substitute it with the Atman or the self. Because when Krishna says I, it's almost always. There are certain times when he's referring to himself in a historical context, but mostly it means the true self. So when the Atman, which is unborn, of changeless nature, the Lord of beings, yet subjugating my Prakriti, I come into being. So how does the divine come into being? That although the Atman is birthless and deathless, there is no birth and no death, it has no change in it, and therefore we know that as beings, we are changing all the time. But there is no change in the Atman, it is never born, and yet, and of course, it's the supreme one. And yet, subjugating Prakriti or nature or Maya, it's through the power of Maya that you and I are born. But the difference here is when Krishna is born, he is the controller of Maya. So he is the one who subjugates Maya and then takes birth. And in your and my case, Maya subjugates us. And so we are born. So that's the one difference to keep in mind. So he's born by my own Maya. And then the next two verses are very often quoted, and you must have heard them many times. So I'll read them together. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srujamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Whenever a descendant of Bharata, there is a decline of dharma and rise of adharma, then I body myself forth. For the protection of the good, for the destruction of the wicked, and for the establishment of dharma, I come into being in every age. So this is our most often quoted two verses to show about what they call it the avatara tattva, the principle of divine incarnation. That why does an incarnation come? And the answer is, of course, whenever dharma declines, whenever adharma increases, God comes down to protect the good and to destroy the evil. Sambhavami yuge yuge, again and again, again and again. Historically, we do see that once every few centuries, a tremendous amount of power descends on earth. Now, saints and mystics and holy people have come in every generation. But just as there are waves, some waves are small, some are big, and some are really huge. There's a tidal wave. Exactly in the same way, once every few generations, while holy people are born in every generation, once every few centuries, we find someone who is so holy that one begins to wonder whether they were human beings who have raised themselves to that divine status, or it was a divine being who has come down as a human being. And that's really the principle of avatar. So if someone says, why does God have to come down as an incarnation? One way of answering that would be, there is a tendency in creation that over time, as we saw before, Krishna already hinted that in the earlier verse, things begin to dilute, things begin to go down. And when things begin to go down, that is what decline of dharma means. And when dharma declines, then adharma, its opposite, evil and wickedness increase. And that time, people who are good often have to suffer. People who are wicked, they become powerful. And so there is some kind of a natural mystery, so to speak, that some great power comes down to restore that balance between dharma and adharma. Now, that's the one way of answering it. This is not a very convincing answer by any sort of any way. I mean, you can raise a lot of questions about it. And I mean, to kind of put a little, being a devil's advocate here, or kind of showing the other side of the thing, one can say, why does God have to come down to restore dharma? God is all powerful. Wherever God is, from wherever God is, God should be able to restore dharma. Why should God have to come down? And secondly, what does the dharma samsthapana even mean? What does restoring dharma mean? Because in the essential nature of the world, we don't really see that much difference. Sri Ramakrishna came in 1836 and in 1886 he passed away. How much did the world change after 1886? When the Buddha came, Jesus, some of these great ones, the Prophet Muhammad, when they came, how much did the world change? And so this dharma samsthapana is actually a problematic phrase. What does establishment of dharma mean? Because clearly, adharma doesn't disappear after an avatar comes. That's for sure. Even during Thakur's time, Sri Ramakrishna's time, there were terrible people, and some people even troubled him a lot. It's not like, oh, everybody suddenly became very saintly around him. And so this establishment of dharma, it's a phrase worth reflecting on. And I would be very interested in knowing what your thoughts are about the dharma samsthapana, what it means. So we will come to that. Let's look at verse 9. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. He who thus knows in true light my divine birth and action, leaving the body, is not born again. He attains to me, O Arjuna. So here Krishna is saying, if someone can know in true light, correctly, tattvataha, not simply in a haphazard sort of way, if one can truly understand the meaning of the birth of an avatar and the actions of an avatar, janma karma chame divyam, if one can truly understand it, then such people will become enlightened. After they die, they will not be born again. They don't have to come to this samsara again. Once Sri Ramakrishna told his disciples, he said, all that they need to know is who I am, who they are, and what our relationship is. And that's essentially it's a beautiful way of describing what spiritual life is. To look in our heart, to find out who we are, to look and say, what is my idea of God? And how are God and I related? And there is no one definitive answer to that. For some people, the answer might be, I'm a child of God, God is my father, God is my mother. For someone else, they might think of God as their child and they are the parent. Or God is my friend. Again, there are many different ways that relationship can be described. Philosophically, people sometimes speak about God being the whole, I being a part of the divine. In non-dualistic thought, they say the essence of my existence and the essence of this entire creation is one and the same, that there is just oneness. So there is no one answer. And so it's not about finding what the correct answer is. what we have to find is, what is the right answer for me? In which way does the divine reveal itself to me? And so that's essentially what Krishna is saying here. If anyone can know the divine birth and action of an avatar, such people are not born again. So what do they need? What kind of qualities they need to have? In verse 10, Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashritaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavamagataha, freed from attachment, fear, and anger, absorbed in me, taking refuge in me, purified by the fire of knowledge, many have attained my being. Although this verse says many have attained, when you and I read this, what we should translate it in our own minds and say, these are the kind of qualities I need to develop in my own life if I have to attain the being of the divine. If I have to become divine myself, I have to free myself from attachment, fear, and anger, absorb, fill my mind with the thought of the divine, surrender myself to the divine, and then I'll become purified by that fire of knowledge. Now, surrender, it's not about saying, oh, I surrender to God, because that's pretty easy. Anyone can say that. But surrendering is actually one of the very difficult practices. Surrendering to God is not easy, because sometimes I have heard oftentimes people very glibly saying, oh, it's all my richa, mother's will, and Thakur is doing it. Easy to say and kind of feels good to say also. But is it true? How often in the course of a day do I remember that everything is mother's will? Otherwise, it becomes a philosophy of convenience, that there's something I cannot deal with, or something that I just don't know what to do with it. So, what to do? It's all mother's will. And the rest of the time, the things I can deal with, I don't even think about the mother's will. What I want to eat, what I shouldn't eat, where I should go, where I shouldn't go, all that is my will. But if there's any problem, oh, that's all mother's will. That doesn't work. So we have to be consistent. And so sometimes it might be more honest, I think, to admit that, yes, I have my will. As long as we have the ego, we have a will. So what we can say is acknowledge that everything happens through mother's will. There is no doubt about it. Everything happens through mother's will. Everything happens through Thakur's will. But we don't remember it. And so most of the things that we do in our daily life, we are willing it. We want to do something. We don't want to do something. So in our prayer, we can be honest and say, Mother or God, or whichever way you do your prayer, that I do things that I like to do. I don't do things that I don't like to do. I have my own will, but I also know that everything happens according to your will. So give me enough wisdom so my will comes as close to your will as possible. Because sometimes I may will something and it may not happen because that was not God's will. And I'm going to feel bad about it because I want to do it and it didn't happen. But the closer my own will goes to the divine will, then whatever I will happen, because that's the divine will. And so when people sometimes say that somebody has become Satya Sankalpa means established in truth. And what that really means is that person's will has become one or goes very close to the divine will. So whatever this person wills happens because it is close to the divine will. So there is a lot to think about will. And the reason I mention will is surrendering really means not willing anything, saying, I'm just like a dried leaf falling down from a tree. The leaf has no choice where it will fall. Wherever the breeze will take, it will go. So that's our ideal. We may not have reached that stage yet, but that's the ideal that may one day come in my life that I will say, that's Sri Ramakrishna used the word power of attorney for that. And we see when he asked Girish Chandra Ghosh in his life to hand over that power of attorney to him. First, when Girish Chandra Ghosh heard about it, he was delighted. Oh, I gave all my responsibility to you. I have nothing more to do then. I'm free. And he said, gladly, he said, I give it to you. Then he realized day by day how tough it is. How often our own will, our own desire comes up, and how often I have to remind myself, no, it's not my will. Let me wait to see what the divine wills. And so that surrendering becomes easier the more there is a reduction of the ego. Extremely egoistic people cannot really surrender. There has to be some amount of ego reduction for surrender to occur. And that's what he means here. By taking refuge in me, mam upashritaha. Now, all may not be able to do it. And so we see different people not getting the same amount of benefit. Even people in spiritual life, people who are interested in religion, some people seem to make quick progress. Some people seem to kind of get sidetracked. Some people seem to be moving slowly. So why is it that not everyone derives the same benefit, even though they all may be seeing themselves as on the path to God? That's described in the next verse, verse 11. Ye yathamam prapadyante tams tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. In whatever way men worship me, in the same way do I fulfill their desires. It is my path, O son of Pritha, that men tread in all ways. The idea is that we find what we are seeking. That God does not directly interfere in the life of anybody. There is one verse in the Gita, which will come later on. He says, Nadatte kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu. Krishna says, I don't accept anybody's sin. Papa, I don't accept anybody's punya. Whatever good karma or bad karma you do, you have to face the consequences of it. Krishna himself, the Lord himself, doesn't interfere into that. What the Lord will do, to the extent we surrender ourselves to it, our own heart opens up. The more our ego goes out, the more the heart opens out to the grace of the divine. And then that grace of the divine does things for us. It's not that God has any favorites, that God decided, oh, you are wonderful. You are surrendered to me, so I'm going to do this for you. You haven't surrendered, I'm not going to do it for you. That's not how it happens. That God's grace is always available. But it's my ego that has closed the door of my heart. The more my ego is reduced, to the extent the ego is reduced, the door of my heart opens. And as much as the door of my heart has opened, God's grace and light flows in, which is already there, present. So it's not that God is partial about who gets more grace or who gets less grace. It's that I have to do my job about opening the door of my heart. And the opening of the door of my heart occurs only when my ego gets out of the way. And that's so it's on us. The responsibility is ours. That's the idea. Okay, we will stop here today. So what do you think about some of the ideas, these first 11 verses that we saw just now? And especially, what do you think about the idea of Dharma Samsthapanam, that when an avatar comes, Dharma is established? What is the meaning of that? So I think I've spoken quite a lot now. So give me some rest, and I want to hear you say something.
I think it's the this tremendous inspiration that they provide for ages after they go. The Krishna is still providing us inspiration, and in our age, it will be Swamiji or Ramakrishna who has re-energized that inspiration. And same teachings of Krishna, but in a new language, which are understandable to us. I think that is a establishing of dharma for spiritual practitioners.
But I mean, superficially, if we look around, it just seems like adharma is much more. I mean, think about how many, when we have retreats and things like that, it's not like people are coming in millions. But if there's a Taylor Swift show, there's a lot more people go there. I'm not saying that's what she's doing with adharma, but that's what I'm saying is people do have different interests. So how would it be establishing? In fact, one of the odd things is we speak about these 4 yugas: Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, Treta, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. These 4 kind of cyclical ways the creation proceeds. And the Golden Age, the Satya Yuga or Krita Yuga, is considered like the best time. And then things decline. By the time Rama comes in Ramayana, Treta Yuga, things have already declined. It's no more the Satya Yuga then. And then Dwapara, things have declined even more. And then Krishna comes. But interestingly, in the Bhagavata, which describes how Krishna died, they said as soon as Krishna died, Kali Yuga started. Now, from Dwapara to Kali Yuga is a step down. So Krishna has come to establish dharma. It should have gone upward, right? So what does the dharma samstapana mean? But one way of thinking that is not to think in kind of numerical terms. It's not that dharma samstapana would mean, oh, all 100% people have become dharma. That's never been the case anytime. But not even in terms of 50-50, like kind of restoring the balance, about more or less good and evil are kind of more or less balanced. It's not numerically like that. Like 50% of the people in the world are good and 50% are not good. It's not, I think what makes sense to my head at least, and let me tell me what you feel about it. It's always the people who are genuinely serious about spiritual life are always going to be a very small minority. That doesn't mean all the other people are bad. A good number of the people are generally good, but are willing to compromise, or willing to be, like, in the name of being practical. They're willing to compromise, but generally good people, unless there are some great difficulties when they feel a necessity to compromise. People are good. And there, of course, there are some people who are on the other end of the spectrum. But I think what an avatar does is this: very few people in every generation, they are the ones who kind of holding up the side of the good and the right, the justice, the dharma. And these fewer people are able to balance the so-called worldly practicality and the evil of the rest of the world. So it's not about 50-50. And so at any given time, in every part of the world, there are these great enlightened beings. Not all of them may become famous, not all of them may write books, they may not give lectures, but there are these really, truly good people. And many of them probably no one has even heard of them. Swamiji says in I think probably in his Karma Yoga lectures that for an enlightened being, it's not necessary that the world should be immediately, person is enlightened, everyone knows about it. Not necessary. He said someone could be enlightened deep inside a cave on a mountain top, and no one even knows that person is enlightened. But that person who is enlightened has to simply think just 5 good thoughts for the good of the world. Those thoughts have the power to move and touch the hearts of sincere seekers, no matter in which corner of the globe they may be. So in a very silent, invisible sort of way, these enlightened beings continue to help us, and we may not even know that they have been helped by them. And I think that is what an avatar does, to make sure that every generation, in every society, that there will be at least a few people who through their holiness, through their goodness, are able to kind of balance out the rest of the people who may be in a much larger number, but who may not have reached that level of purity yet. And one other thing we could say is that every time an avatar comes, they leave behind a living tradition. So, I mean, avataris, they are not like different people. It's the same divine being who came as the Buddha, who came as Jesus, who has come as Ramakrishna, who came as Shankara in many different ways. So, every time this avatar comes, they leave behind a divine form and a divine name, and inspired by their life, inspired by their personality, inspired by their teaching, a whole kind of a tradition grows around it. And that's why Buddha continues to inspire people. Same with Jesus, same with Muhammad, same with others. And so that's the power of the avatar. In many different forms, when the divine comes, they continue to help and inspire. So these are the thoughts that come to my mind when I think about Dharma Samsthapanam. But feel share. Yes, Indrani, you have something to ask?
Yeah, so for this terms, Dharma Samsthapanartha, I thought 2 ways. One is living that according to the Dharma, how to live practically according to the Upanishad, how to live and set an example. So everything is there in the Vedas, everything is recorded, but how to live that life. So I think that's one of the idea Thakur left, Sri Ramakrishna, and Swamiji also said about it. So how to live that life? What does it mean to have a vairagya? What does it mean to have tyaga? To set a modern example. And also the second I thought that came to my mind is what Thakur himself said is to present according to the modern age, like what he said. Everything was there, but preparing and presenting in the current language, in the current situations, social, economic situations, how to live that, how to interpret that. So that's what came to my mind according to the modern age Dharma Samsthapanartha.
Yeah, good. I mean, that's a very good point, that to kind of set an example, to show us how to make these teachings practical as human beings, as we go through our daily life and meeting our challenge. I mean, look at Holy Mother's life. And when you look at how how the kind of a messy her brothers and her sister-in-law and her niece, and how troubled they were, and how quarrelsome family members, and how mother said that in spite of living with such people, and it's possible to remain completely immersed in the thought of divine. And one is able to identify with that, because we can sometimes look upon our own neighbors, our own extended families, and maybe say, oh, I also have similar problems. If mother could do it, then maybe mother has showed me how we could do it. So yes, that's a good example. And then, of course, giving the teachings in a language we can understand today. And Hari also mentioned that in the beginning. That's the reason when Avatar comes and speaks in an idiom that we can follow. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think it's like an intervention wherein if that intervention doesn't happen, then this knowledge will be lost. Whereas with the intervention, there is more chance for the knowledge to pass along, or at least continue to exist in such a way that it will help for the world to continue to exist, or the beings to continue to exist.
Do you think that's the reason? I mean, it's not, I mean, Avatar doesn't come, but great saints have come again and again. And they are the ones who keep this teaching continue. So that doesn't seem to be like a very absolute reason for an avatar to come down, right?
Right. I mean, I get a point wherein those teachers aren't enough to restore the balance, then probably is.
Okay, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Maharaj,
Who is speaking?
Smita Maharaj.
Yeah, bolo.
Yeah. Maharaj, I was thinking that giving us, like when you read Gospel, Gita, like giving us the examples of adharma or what not to do also helps us. Like all those spiritual seekers who wants to follow the dharma, also the examples of adharma also tells us what to do and what not to do.
That's true. That's true. That's very true.
And Maharaj, sometimes Thakur's teachings are very modern. I remember, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me, but I think at some place he said that we should think before we do something. And he was giving an example where people were going on having kids. I mean, and they can't feed or nurture even few kids, I mean, one or two, but they go on, I mean, without thinking. So this was in his time. Now it's an accepted fact. But even in his time, he said this, and he's a monk, and even he said this.
That's
I mean,
true.
very, very modern teaching.
That's very true. Very true. All right. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. And so we'll meet tomorrow at the same time, 7:30, and then we will continue this study. Have a good night and see you tomorrow. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu. Jai Ma.
Pranam Maharaj.
Hari Om, Hari Om. Stay warm if it's cold in your place.
Jai Ma Maharaj.
Jai Ma. Jai Ma. Hari Om, Hari Om. Jai Ma. Namaskar. Namaskar.